When Michael Saylor was solving a problem called like my savings are at risk, my life savings. I sacrificed a lot to have these savings. I could have had a billion more yachts or blah blah blah, right? But I didn't. I had the savings, and it's now at risk, right? Everyone can relate to that. His problem that he's solving today is not as relatable.
Yeah, his problem is I need $40 billion to buy Bitcoin. I can relate to that problem.
The world ain't here to make life easy for everybody, And when it comes to the money, it's just, I think we all would agree that a more difficult monetary environment is probably a better one for the world. I barely think an individual is like that capable of hodling, but only, they're the best. You get to a partnership, two people, like a marriage, it gets a lot harder. You throw a third person in there, man, that Bitcoin's getting sold. Like somebody is going to do it.
You've just been given the job of CIO of Amazon. What's your first move?
I'm gonna read this book. I'm gonna read this fucking book right now, right? I'm gonna go read this.
Hey guys, welcome back. Another episode of Bitcoin Brilliance. Today I'm joined by Fundamentals. I consider this man a good friend, not only in Bitcoin world, but in real world. It's nice meeting people in internet land and getting those kind of connections where you can find friends, which is cool. That aside, he's an interesting dude. He found Bitcoin and gave up his career, quit his job, started a couple dozen podcasts, and wrote a Bitcoin book. Pretty badass if you ask me. His book is called Bitcoin for Institutions. I'd highly recommend checking it out, regardless of where you stand on what you do for a job. It's an interesting take, especially given his expertise in the field. He was very deep in some sort of money management something, which Bitcoiners should know more about. It's a unique perspective on how Bitcoin can and might be used in the future as institutions will adopt it. And as he goes on to say, Bitcoin is for individuals. That's the most important thing here. I hope you enjoyed the show. Check it out. Let me know what you think. Let's get it rolling. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Another episode of Bitcoin Brilliance. Today on the show, we will be discussing Bitcoin for Institutions with none other than the author, Mr. Brian Fundamentals. Fundamentals, Brian. Welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm pretty good, man. Pretty good.
It's an exciting time to be a Bitcoiner. We were just discussing before recording here. It's a lot of fun. We got to wheel it back from the madness and just talk about some simpler things like how institutions can adopt Bitcoin, right? The important things.
It is funny because, I feel like I've waited 2 years to come back on your show. And the last time we talked, we ended on a bit of a cliffhanger because this was 2 years ago and I was already starting to form my theories about BlackRock and the ETF. And you'd asked me, how do you feel about the ETF? And I'm like, you were like, are you dead set against it or not? And I was like, I'm not dead set against it. And you were like, oh, like so disappointed. And I was like, well, let's just try to talk about it again. And well, I guess we're back.
I cannot believe it's been 2 years. That's insane. Time flies, huh?
Pretty wild.
Blocks go by.
You gave me the greatest title in the history of podcasting episodes, called Fundamentals. Oh my God, I'm a stupid person.
I think it's relatable. It was relatable. Yeah.
I loved it. I truly, truly love it. It really captures, for me, I don't really think I find Bitcoin until I have that moment.
I completely agree, dude. I think a lot of people can relate to that. So, yeah, let it be known if this is your first time watching this show or seeing Brian, Mr. Fundamentals, check out his first episode. You can find that on my podcast feeds for sure. That was a good episode, and we kind of dove into who we were as Bitcoiners. So that'll be a good preface to this episode. This is, I guess, a sequel. 2 years later. That's insane to me.
Crazy, right?
Has it been that friggin' long? Okay. Let's get into it, dude. You wrote a book called Bitcoin for Institutions. Question number 1. Now, okay, let me say this. I'm going to ask maybe a lot of dumb questions. People will be like, there's no dumb questions. I'm here to prove them wrong.
Yeah, I'm not a believer of that, by the way. I believe there are dumb questions.
Okay, right on. So the first question is, as I was reading this, I was trying to figure out who is this book written for? I understand it's for institutions, but like, it's not. I love you. I read your book, but I don't think it was written for me. It's high above my pay grade as a Bitcoin podcaster. So describe for me or the audience the ideal person that needs to read this book.
Okay, great. The ideal person this book is suited for or geared for. Now, I do really genuinely believe everyone can read the book, and I would love for that to happen. But in my mind, my motivation now, mind you, I spent 28 years. It's interesting. Something just happened. Did I lose you?
I'm trying to make we're still recording, it's fine. Maybe I'll leave
Okay.
this in. I'm
Yeah.
trying to make the YouTube thing work, right? With
Yeah, I get
dynamic
it. I get it.
fucking and then I just booted myself. So okay, where we were at is
You were going to ask me who's this really the target audience of the book,
correct.
right?
Go ahead.
Okay.
No, you're still good. You can keep
Oh, okay.
going.
We're still good. Okay. Okay. The target. I like looking at you when I mean, I do like looking at you when I'm answering.
I'm right here, brother.
Is that okay?
Sure.
You know, I do 4 podcasts and I have partners for all of them. I do enjoy talking to an actual person.
Yeah, I get that.
Okay. So is that okay? Is that all right?
Yeah, for sure. I could stay right here. We can cuddle later if you really want to.
This is like my handicap. Like I need to see you to talk.
No, I
to
get it. I get it.
Okay, target audience of the book.
Target audience of the book.
Okay. Target audience is, I would say, executive teams of a company, mainly like a chief investment officer who is trying to develop a worldview about Bitcoin. Executives who are grappling with like, do I really need to take this seriously? Or I have activist investors, i.e., or annoying Bitcoin people on my back, pressuring me to, really pressuring my company to take on Bitcoin. And I thought about like, so like when the Microsoft thing happened, which what I call the Microsoft thing was like, there was a vote of their board to like look into adopting Bitcoin. And it didn't go anywhere. But I thought about the scenario where it did go somewhere. And it's actually a pretty horrifying movie if you play it out, because like what actually happens if like Microsoft is compelled by a vote now to like implement a bunch of Bitcoin projects. Microsoft has 100,000 employees. Just imagine like how many project managers do you think they would need to run Bitcoin projects, and who the hell would they be? Right? Like they would be like our friend, like our insane friends would be like the people they'd be grasping at to run Bitcoin projects. And what would they like? This is sort of a nightmare scenario. Microsoft would almost definitely do something really stupid with Bitcoin and maybe blow up the company, maybe blow up their industry. I don't like to get so, I don't know what the word is. I don't like to get so fatalistic.
Doomer.
Yeah, I don't like to
Doomer
get so
thinking?
fatalistic, but my imagination, right? My imagination of this was pretty like, wow, this is dangerous. We have now companies being forced to like vote. What if these votes, like I know every Bitcoiner out there was praying that the vote came out like, oh, now Microsoft has to like look into Bitcoin, looking at buying Bitcoin. You have to understand, I had this very, 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 very strong view that companies will not hodl Bitcoin. They might buy it, they will not keep it. I don't even think that I barely think an individual is like that capable of hodling, but only, they're the best. You get to a partnership, 2 people, like a marriage, gets a lot harder. You throw a third person in there, man, that Bitcoin's getting sold. Like somebody is going to do it. You put governance, you get like a board, you get all this. my opinion of companies and institutions being like actually buying and holding Bitcoin is like zero. Okay. So when I started imagining, okay, what are these companies going to do if they're compelled to like do like use Bitcoin or do something, make their company do something with Bitcoin? Um, I felt the need to at least have my say. And I like my say is like if I'm gonna have actually any confidence that like let's just say a sincere company. Now I advised pensions and insurance companies. So that's who the fuck am I to write this book, right? It's like so okay, I spent 28 years advising pensions insurance companies on investments, mostly liability side, if that means anything to anybody. Like based on your liabilities, typically um, what should your investment profile look like? And so pensions tend to have longer liabilities, and the practice of long duration bonds took off. In the mid 2000s, I was part of that. Took off really in the UK, and then chickens came home to roost in 22 when gilt spiked, and they needed a big bailout. And you know, bottom line is pensions had a love affair with long duration bonds because that matched there was a time where that was thought to match the liability requirements. And so I specialized in liability driven type investing. And I think Bitcoin is natural for anything more than 4 or 5 year liabilities, but I had no confidence that a company would ever really do it right. I felt like they needed to know a lot of things before they took that step. And that's really what, the first third of the book is like real talk, right? It's like, dude, if we're going to do this, you need to know really, why does it matter? Why does this really matter to people? And I think Bitcoin really does matter to people. And if I'm a CIO of a company, or if I'm working with a CIO being the chief investment officer, if I'm working with a CIO, I need them to understand why people care so much. If they don't understand this, they're going to make a lot of mistakes. And what are the examples of things they need to understand? They need to understand people value Bitcoin for uncensorability, for permissionlessness, for things like privacy. Believe it or not, still it does exist, right? People deeply value it. People view Bitcoin as a solution to like their most important fucking problems. That there was probably a time in their life they didn't think those problems had any solution, and then they discovered Bitcoin, and then all of a sudden they're like really opened up power in their life. And I think a company that only is in it for a return is going to be outbid. They're not going, they're just not going to understand at all what really gives Bitcoin its value. And if you're a chief investment officer, it's your job is really to understand what is the base. I'm sorry. What is I'm talking with my hands. What is really the baseline? What is, who's the buyer of last resort? Why does this thing always go up, right? Why does it also go down when it goes down? So I really wanted to address all these things and try to make somebody an executive understand all of these things. I don't know if that helps answer that question.
Yeah, it does. This is so. Yeah, might be a long pod. I got so many fucking questions, but a chief investment officer in context of a major institution, say something that makes tens of millions of dollars a year, some business like this does. How much power does that role have in that company? Because if Bitcoin is or if an institution is going to buy Bitcoin and Bitcoin is for individuals, then the individual in charge of the money has to have a lot of power in given company in order to make these executive decisions. So my question is like, do they have that power? Because so that's question number one. And then you bring on the idea of Saylor or Fink, and we can talk about them later. I want to do that.
Yeah.
But the reason Saylor worked is because he had like giga control of MicroStrategy, right? That was the only
Yep,
reason it worked.
that's correct.
So in
That's
these
right.
other companies, like a Microsoft or whatever, maybe not something as big as Microsoft, how much power does a CIO have?
So
And yeah, I guess
so
that's
let
the
me
question.
just if if the board already decides, like in a vote, that we need you to now do something with Bitcoin because that's what our investors want. Like if that's what the board decides, then it really at that point in time, it's now a matter of how do I not fuck this up, not a matter of like who has the power to decide what happens. It's already been decided at that point. And what you need now are the people that to me, the key people, you have the CEO, you have this chief investment officer, and you got the CFO that has to like actually manage the results, right? Those would be the most key people, right? Um, I can relate the most to the CIO, and what I feel like is really important is once the CIO can articulate Bitcoin's value, right? Which understand that people there's a quote in the book. I'm not sure exactly where it is, and early on where I said like people genuinely really do value it for its ability to give them a shot at freedom. And if a company ever views it as just a return, just a straight source of returns, and it becomes co-opted, it's not going to the investment thesis becomes like invalid. It becomes essentially zero. Like the reason Bitcoin doesn't bottom out is because people fucking want it, right? People want it for people. The people who really want it aren't just looking for returns. They have a much wider and larger vision for what Bitcoin does for them than just returns, right? Most of us have it in cold storage and aren't even thinking about returns, right? We're thinking about the rest of our life and how to build our life around it, right? So a chief investment officer needs to understand this, needs to understand, and needs to be able to once they can articulate that, it's like they're basically speaking on behalf of the organization. And theoretically, the organization understands why Bitcoin matters to people, right? Why individuals give it value. The last thing I want to say on this is one of the other reasons I wrote the book was because, so I mentioned I had very little confidence in companies hodling, right? Um, I would guess most people, when they think of institutional Bitcoin, that's all they think of is company buying Bitcoin and holding it on their balance sheet, putting it in their treasury. But that's actually very far out on the risk spectrum. So much so, I have very little confidence that most companies, unless they're like chartered to do it, which now all of a sudden there's like 15 fairly large companies that are chartered essentially to buy and hold Bitcoin. But like outside of them, if you're thinking about the Amazons and the Microsofts of the world, right? I wanted to give a playbook that had a lot of options that were much less risky, that were on the broad spectrum of risk, from almost no risk to to where it is when it's on your balance sheet, which is actually pretty significant. That's a pretty significant level of risk. Perfectly manageable, and not much more risky than bonds, obviously, and things like that. But yet, in an absolute sense, it's still out there on the risk spectrum. And so, like most of what I write about in the book, most of the in the last section of all the solutions, it's actually much. I'd say much less risky than holding on your balance sheet.
Okay, yeah, so that makes sense. There's when it comes to companies buying Bitcoin, there'd be an order of operations. There'd be a board that decides this is what we want to do, and then the CIO would say, okay, this is what we're going to do, and then the CFO and the CEO organize how they're going to do that. Um, this is my next question for
They're
you.
going to use Bitcoin and not necessarily buy it, but they're going to use it, maybe sell
Okay,
products around it.
okay, that's fair. Um, you discussed the ETF. We got to get into the ETFs. I know you have an opinion on the ETFs. This is my question for you about the ETFs is this. Did the Bitcoin ETF, the main one, whatever it's
The
called,
spot ETF, like
the IBIT or whatever it is?
I think there's like two big ones, right? It's IBIT and FBTC. Like, and
Okay.
it's great. BlackRock and Fidelity. It's a tale of two strategies, right?
So my question is this: did the creation of these ETFs destroy the Bitcoin revolution that we all care about? Because it really did make it easier for companies to invest in, easier for people to get exposure to. So then when you talk about all the things that Bitcoiners care about, the hardcore Bitcoiners, the ones that really give a fuck about what's going on here, that shit's all flown out the window. We joke about paper Bitcoin summer and all this stuff, but it's all completely bullshit now. Like there's all those narratives have died
I don't agree.
because of the. Okay, so tell me why the Bitcoin revolution is still permanent in a world with an ETF.
It's okay. I have very many responses to this. My first one will be, just imagine you and I just finished our conversation from 2 years ago. And, the ETF wasn't approved yet, but I knew it was going to be. We all knew at the time already that BlackRock was working on it. So we knew it was going to get approved. My first response really is that if we just were monks and moved to the middle of, South America and worked on Bitcoin the way we do where we live now, we would not really interact much with the ETF, right? In fact, I don't interact with the ETF at all in my life now. And I'm building a lot of things with Bitcoin. I don't really, honestly, don't interact with it. And I think it's very possible for Bitcoiners to operate in a world where they don't interact with the ETF. So that's just like my first response. I know it's bringing people that suck and don't understand us, and that's part of why the book exists.
Let me argue the idea that we're not interacting with the ETFs if we're not directly buying it. Because now that it does exist, now that all these companies are buying Bitcoin, paper Bitcoin, ETF
we haven't
Bitcoin,
seen anything yet. It's probably 1% of utilization.
But this massively affects the average sat stacker's purchasing power, right? And what we care about, and how Bitcoin reacts to the market. So there's one thing that can be controlled with Bitcoin. They can't control how the network works. They can't control how many Bitcoins go out. They can't control the censorability. They can't all the buzzwords, right? Mm-hmm. But they can control the price if they buy a fuck ton or sell a fuck ton. And that's my I don't know if it's a concern, but it does affect us.
I get that.
Through proxy, as the kids say.
It's a fair point. I feel like we have the time where the door is open to stack, and we are in a race against time. I came in very late. I came in with, you came in probably a year before me, so we both probably feel like we came in quite late, right?
Yeah, getting earlier by the day though, so it's all good.
We came in. You and I didn't stack Bitcoin at $100 a coin, right? We're way. We are both post-COVID Bitcoiners.
Yeah.
Correct. I felt like I honestly do. I still feel like it's a race against time. Look, 2022 was a gift for us, right? And yes, it's gotten harder because there's more people buying Bitcoin. And but that is the way the world does work. I would say the fact that we can still buy Bitcoin, and it's still very early, and I think we both probably agree that 100 and whatever the hell the price is right now is nothing compared to what it's going to be. And the door is still quite a bit open. I don't think the ETF is responsible for shutting the door on anybody just yet. And I think a lot of people think there's price suppression. I'm not one of I'm not necessarily. I don't have a strong view that there's price suppression. In fact, the case I make in the book about why BlackRock is here is might suggest that I actually believe BlackRock might be preventing shenanigans from some parties that because they don't want that. They don't want their they don't want their apple cart ruined by shitty actors like Coinbase. That said, I don't think we're at the point yet where we can say, oh, the ETF ruined sat stacking. Right. In fact, the price is up. The price is up from where it was. Probably not because of the availability of the ETF. Probably because of what the U.S. government said it was going to do. I think it's the majority of. Now, it certainly got easier for people. I guess I just say this because the ETF isn't really being utilized. Like, it's not even close to being utilized yet. It's definitely gonna it's definitely going to accelerate. Probably, it's definitely probably. Look how I speak.
I've seen.
It's almost certainly going to accelerate. Sorry, it's certainly going to accelerate a price spike when it happens, just because it makes it easier.
But doesn't IBIT hold like in their ETF 700,000 coins or something? What do you mean?
Is that what they're up to now?
I think so. That's what I saw the numbers
Substantial.
recently. That's not being used. That's being used a lot.
If
they hold the coins.
Compared to what you and I probably think it should be being used at, first of all, we know there's a lot of suppression of institutions that aren't allowing the allocation into the ETF. That's what I mean, is like it's being held back a lot. It's not even close to the it's not even close to the utilization it should be. Would you agree with that?
I think more people are going to buy Bitcoin because they need it. I don't know if people are going to. Okay, so here, let me ask.
Individuals aren't buying the ETF though. That's
I'm not buying the fucking ETF.
Yeah. And nobody with like a brain is stacking ETFs.
So here's let me answer that in a question is what's the incentive for an institution to buy Bitcoin, given what we know that individuals care about Bitcoin for, fill in the blank Bitcoin buzzwords. Why does an institution give a fuck other than number go up?
I don't think they have much. And that's why, I don't really cover that. I don't talk about buying Bitcoin. I don't actually talk much about it for institutions in my third chapter of what they should do. I think mutual funds should buy Bitcoin because that's how they enhance their S&P funds. They can enhance their funds with Bitcoin. So if you're BlackRock and you have a mutual fund complex, or if you're any of these companies, right? You should buy Bitcoin so that you can enhance the returns of your mutual funds. You want to provide a 1 or 2%. You want an S&P fund that's 98% S&P and 2% Bitcoin. Over 5 years, you're going. Over the last 5 years, it's outperformed the S&P alone by something like 1,000 or 1,500 basis points. I have a chart in the book that shows how absurd only a 2% enhancement, right? So if you're a mutual fund, then you should buy Bitcoin so you can have a menu of enhanced funds. And I'm pretty sure BlackRock's enhancing the shit out of their complex now. So I think that's probably the only example I have of a company actually buying, saying they should buy Bitcoin. The rest is really I would just generally, the ETF can be used for hedging. It's a very powerful tool for hedging. So if you are a company that has Bitcoin and you have a bunch of gains and you borrow off them and you're afraid of getting liquidated, and if the price goes down, you have a program. You can actually hedge that with you can actually use the ETF to hedge that, right? ETF is a really stupid thing to own in place of Bitcoin. It's part of what the whole first part of the book is about, right? You yield a lot. You give up a ton. You give up, you take on counterparty risk, whereas with Bitcoin, you have none. It's you're taking on an absurd amount of more risk by using the ETF than using actual Bitcoin. However, I think companies need to crawl before they can walk, and they need to walk before they can run. And if they're really FOMO'd about Bitcoin, then maybe they start with the ETF, but have a plan of getting themselves competent enough to actually hold their own Bitcoin, because the benefits of that are so great, right? But again, my focus isn't really on buying and holding Bitcoin, because that's actually what they should do. They should buy and hold real Bitcoin. My focus really is on how can you offer products like deferred compensation, which is more like a mutual. It's like a 401k, like it's 401k that's like not funded in the U.S. In the U.S., they have these programs where 401k like programs, and you can use the ETF essentially to offer Bitcoin exposure to your employees, right? And even there, you probably should hold real Bitcoin even if you're doing that. But again, most of these companies, it's going to take years for them to get the competence to be able to actually hold Bitcoin effectively. And there's not that many anchor watches out there in the world that can really, stand a big. I don't know if there's any company that can stand an Amazon up, right? If they really wanted to dive in and use Bitcoin to, say, pay their employees or something like that.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, touches on something that I wanted to discuss. As page 106, you just brought it up very quickly there, and something that companies can do to use Bitcoin. You're talking about Bitcoin as an investment option in an NQDC.
Yeah, and that's American based, but like in America, we have 401ks, but they're subject to compensation limits. So like if you make more than like 300 something $1,000 a year, you're capped on how much you can put into a 401k. And NQDC, non-qualified deferred compensation, is something that enables somebody to continue a 401k like benefit beyond that level of compensation. So the CIO that I'm targeting, who makes $10 million a year, right, is very interested in that, in getting paid Bitcoin exposure, right? And so this is a way to pay executives, really, right?
Let me just ask a quick question about that. This is very dumb question again. I looked at that and I was just like, but why though? Why not just, if you're deferring pay to get Bitcoin exposure and you're some CEO or whatever that gets paid 500 grand a year, why not just take all of your pay and buy real Bitcoin? What is the benefit of the NQDC,
non-qualified? It's called non-qualified deferred.
Why are people incentivized to use this program?
Okay, two reasons. From the individual's perspective, from the recipient's perspective, you don't pay taxes on that compensation. So like it's called deferred compensation because you don't actually have to pay taxes today. So you probably envision a world where your tax rate, your tax bracket, maybe this is US focused as well, but you may envision your future when you're retired, that you'd be in a lower tax bracket because you're not going to be taking in $5 to $10 million a year. You may only be taking in a few $100,000 a year
because you deferred it in this program.
So you don't pay, like you may be paying at the highest bracket today.
Okay.
So you don't want to pay taxes on all of your comp. So you can decide not to take it all.
Okay.
Right. Which is what people do in a 401k too, right? It's like with people with a 401k, they defer that taxation on that compensation. And this program just allows you to do it on much more compensation. So for the tax deferral, it's very worthwhile. And then, then your investment base is on a much higher amount, right? So, because you haven't paid taxes yet, you can buy a lot more of whatever the investment offering is. And if that investment offering is Bitcoin exposure, which, I'm not aware of anyone who's doing this yet, it becomes a very powerful tool for the company. If you're paying your employees, that's something that I would think would be incredibly desirable to have that option. Right. So from the employee's perspective, they're deferring taxation and they need now they want to direct that deferred compensation into an investment. The company has to offer Usually companies offer bonds, and it sucks, right? Some companies might offer S&P or their own company stock for this type of program, but there's no reason now not to offer Bitcoin exposure.
Okay, I guess this is just my angry Bitcoiner
Yeah,
maximalist
let's have it.
toxicness coming out.
So,
But like, fuck taxes, right? So if Bitcoin wins, we destroy the state. All of a sudden, taxes don't exist anymore. If you live in a world where you're fully on Bitcoin, you can just disregard this fucking bullshit, fucking theft that happens anyways. So my question for you, I guess, is where do you stand on taxes right now, just morally, and where your head's at, given, like what's that saying? There's two certainties in life: death and taxes. I just have always been anti that. Do you still believe in not that do you still believe in taxes, but do you just think that they're inevitable and that there's no way to get around them? Because this is one of the key problems that Bitcoin solves, is putting two middle fingers up to the state and saying, you're not taking my fucking money. And so do these CIOs in the high profile positions, are they just still trapped by the state? Is that kind of your argument?
Well, they will be, right? And the executives at these companies will be. There's likely never going to be a scenario where like Amazon's executive team is all, is 100% into Bitcoin and not paying any taxes. And besides, how are they paying?
End of interview. I'm sick of Of course there is. No. Okay. So it'll be a long time.
We're not living in that world anytime soon.
Sure. Okay.
So again, you have to crawl before you can run. You have to actually figure out what Bitcoin is, and right. Like how do they even find out what the hell Bitcoin is and what it does? Right? They're not going to go from where they are now to being like to where you are, right? That's a very heavy lift.
So with the NQDC, you're tax deferred for X amount of time. Mm-hmm. You've put money into Bitcoin exposure. These are all triggering words for me, by the way. But you do that.
We're here to trigger.
Eventually, you want your gains made by your NQDC. You've made Bitcoin's gone 10x, and you're like, okay, I want my money. Then do you get taxed? Like, how do the rules work there?
So basically, the way people do it is you decide when you get it. So you might say, I want half of all of this when I leave, when I terminate, right? Which is what a lot of people do, and it's definitely what I did, and it's how I'm living without a job right now. So you might have a bunch triggered upon termination, which kind of makes sense. You'll pay taxes when you're earning nothing, and you'll pay taxes on that income in a lower tax bracket, right? I know taxes suck, but it is a reality for for most of us today. Look, I think Bitcoin helps those who help themselves. I don't really know what else to say, right? But just conventionally, if you're looking at an institutional landscape that has literally zero Bitcoin adoption, and you say to yourself, Bitcoin adoption can be a lot more than just buying Bitcoin, because most companies aren't going to do that, right? And even if they do, they're not going to hold it, and right. So then the question is, how else can we have them participate in Bitcoin, right? Well, it has to be beneficial to them. It has to be beneficial to them and their employees, and well, that should be easy because Bitcoin's awesome, right? There should be many ways to make it beneficial. Okay, and that's the answer to the question, right? So what this fucking NQDC, it's a bunch of letters, but the reality is it is a very low lift for a company to start participating in Bitcoin. It's like the lowest lift.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah, I just see. So this is why it's tough for me. I've always just I've said this on my show, but I'm just a construction worker. I own my own business where I'm the only employee.
But look, this doesn't matter to you. You know what I mean? Like this
No,
doesn't.
it does because I'm curious about how Bitcoin is going to evolve over time. That's why I care, right? So I'm trying to figure out. Okay, so if the institutions are coming, which has been a fucking meme for 4 years,
It's
so now they're coming.
I find that to be influencer drivel. It's like used to. It's another thing I got triggered by a lot. People saying, "Oh, how'd you feel if Facebook added?" That's how dated these memes are, right? If they added $2 billion of Bitcoin to their balance sheet, how would you feel if you woke up the next morning? I fucking hate. That's like what kind of fucking triggered me into this deep thought process about what would that look like? How would I actually feel? And the reality is, like, I probably wouldn't feel much because I'd be like, well, those lettuce-handed motherfuckers will probably be have no Bitcoin very soon. Unless like unless they're advised, like somehow they have some insane governance, or is just Zuck is just like super locked in. You know, I mean, there's almost no scenario where they keep that Bitcoin. So I don't know. Like it started with that. It started with all that influencer shit, right? That was really just designed to scare retail into buying Bitcoin. It had nothing to do with institutions.
Okay, that's fair. I want to kind of get a little deeper here.
Yeah.
As time goes on, these big companies, like I think a lot about how Bitcoin is for the individual, which you discuss in part one. And
Yes.
so
It's the law of the land.
institutions in the fiat world start getting bigger, more people, more project managers, and all this shit. Do you think that Bitcoin will contract it back to where institutions are run by CEOs that are just the dictator of the company? And would that be a good thing? I feel like it would be, but do you see that happening more, where more companies will be like fucking Strategy, where it's just one dude that says, this is what we're fucking doing? And is that a good thing? Because I kind of think it is. So did fiat ruin institutions?
Totally. I mean, think about it, right? Think about how much like there's a reason why CEOs used to be dictators because they were the ones getting all the pay and their executive teams were getting they were getting paid pretty well, but they weren't like, you know, they weren't making $10 million a year. Like your CFOs were not making $10 million a year, 50 years ago. I mean, even inflation adjusted. It was like basically the CEO took all the risk and was making the lion's share of the money. His executive team were doing very well, but they weren't like they weren't in this echelon of Cantilloners where they're making the kind of money that just is, in my opinion, absurd. And I don't even remember how long it's been since I observed this, but I've seen this in companies where the lower and lower people, and I was one of these people. I was like a low level person making a lot of money, right? And I was like, this is kind of fucked up. Like, and I saw the behavior of people like not really giving a shit because they don't really have a lot on the line, right? They have no skin in the game, and it's now transformed to just everyone trying to keep their jobs because they know they're paid more than they should. They should be, right? That's what fiat has done in companies, and that's why most of these companies are fucking zombie losers. I do think that I think the zombie company, I think hard money, which I don't know when we see hard money, to be honest. I don't know when we see the world. I just don't know what it takes. Like, I don't know how much capitulation is going to be necessary for soft money to be gone, right? Or to be mostly gone enough to start really driving this behavior. But once it is, yes, you will not get away with like slow, endless committee bullshit. You just won't. The companies will not be able to build um, with that kind of slowness, and it'll be either a dictator CEO that's really shitty, and those companies will die, or a dictator CEO that does the right things, and those companies will thrive. And you'll see the selection process is because that's who will accumulate all the capital. And so, yeah, we will. I believe we will find ourselves in a world with a bunch of dictator CEOs who are actually good.
Okay, that's good. You said one thing there. I have to correct you. This pisses me off, man.
Go ahead.
Hard easy money, not hard and soft. For fuck's sake, so many people make that mistake, but it's fine.
That's fine.
Um, so many people say it. Maybe it's whatever. It's just one of those things.
tell
I'm
me
going to
the
edit this part
distinction.
out.
Tell me the distinction of.
Hard money is
Yeah, I get
hard.
hard money. I mean, just between soft and easy money. Tell me what is bothering
The
you.
hard refers to how hard it is to make more. So it's very hard, as in difficult, to make more Bitcoin, and
Yes.
it's easy to make fiat. Hard money is not like hard like a rock, and then soft money is soft like a fucking blanket. It's the wrong fucking language. I'm cutting this all out,
I
but
like
it's
it.
just
No, don't cut this
it's one
out.
of
This
those
is
things.
good.
Anyways,
Okay.
okay, I gotta get your opinion on this, and this has nothing
Okay.
to do with the book, but your expertise is very interesting to me, and I have a lot of communist friends because everybody's poor and they think communism is the solution. And this is one of their arguments that I've been trying to figure out myself too.
Okay.
Amazon,
Yeah.
Jeff Bezos makes billions of dollars a year,
Mm.
pays his employees like shit. So all the communists say, why is he getting so much money and all the employees are making, 20 cents per package delivered? And I don't have the answer to that question. So I'm wondering if you do, given your perspective on how companies work. And if not, that's fine too. I
I
don't know if you
mean,
can answer that question.
he gets away with it because that's what people accept, and it's like, and I don't say that like it's wrong. It's just like that's if people didn't accept it, he wouldn't get away with it, right? I mean, it's like he knows how much he has to pay his people because they do it. They do the job, and the company runs really well. Like, for the most part, I don't see a lot of issues because people are quitting and there's a real shortage of people doing those jobs, right? So I think he seems to know exactly how much to pay these people, and those people don't seem to have the kind of problem with it that the communists do.
Yeah, I know. There's people that are just willing to work because they have to work, and then I
Is
know
he a
it's
dick for doing that? I don't know. I don't have opinions like that, to be honest. I don't care.
okay. Yeah, that's
Right?
fair.
He's
It's just,
free to do that. He runs his fucking business. He's free to do it as like maybe if I don't consider that exploitation though.
okay.
Particularly when he built the fucking company,
Hmm.
right? Like if it was his son, I might be like, oh, what a dick.
Yeah.
This guy built nothing. But I don't know. Like Jeff Bezos actually fucking cleaned his own toilets probably for decades. Just did everything.
Yeah, I know. I tend to agree. It's like ultimately he's trying to make money and he's looking at his profit margins and saying, if I can pay my people very little, then I will. And
I mean, if
it's
he couldn't do it and he had to pay, if he couldn't do it and he had to pay them more, he might not have a business. He might not have a viable business.
yeah, that's the other
But
thing too. It's like if he does pay the people more, then the prices of everything goes up. And then that's
but
just the fiat spiral again anyways.
but like those people's value doesn't necessarily depend on like what Jeff Bezos is worth. Like his net worth doesn't determine these people's value, right? These people's value is determined by what they do and what they do contributes to that company. And it actually it all seems very fair and equilibrium like because you don't really you don't see them striking and having a problem with it, and you see this company being very successful. So I mean, I don't know, it all seems kind of normal.
Okay. Theoretical question for you then. You've just been given the job of CIO of Amazon. What's your first move?
I'm gonna read this book. I'm gonna read this fucking book right now, right? I'm gonna go read this, and
Sure.
because I'm hoping like a lot of people are telling this guy. Anyway, yeah. But my first move, honestly, I don't know if I don't know if my first move is Bitcoin related, but it probably is. It probably is a statement. I mean, presumably, if they hired me, they know who I am and they know what I'm about, and they're not gonna that would be pretty retarded for them to do that and not expect me to be sort of all in on Bitcoin. So it would be really a statement. I would write a statement on what the worldview is, which is, Bitcoin is important. Um, very useful for many things. Probably like Amazon. Amazon doesn't have a pension. Amazon doesn't have like long-term liability. Amazon doesn't have a lot of things that fit very well with what I wrote about. But I guarantee you, I could find some medium-term liabilities and debt that could easily be unlocked by using Bitcoin. But at the very least, I would be writing a statement on, you know, why Bitcoin matters. That's my first act.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah, and then hopefully buy a bunch, and then Amazon gets better, and then all the things that you said. Yeah, okay. I want to. Okay, let's favorite podcaster speak. Let's shift gears.
Oh yeah, let's pivot.
I love pivoting. I want to talk page 84.
Ooh.
This made me friggin' just lose my marbles, dude.
Dude, I love you, man. I love you so much. I'm
talk-
sorry that I made you lose your marbles, but I fucking love you for like just losing them. You know, caring so much.
So you discuss modern portfolio theory.
Yeah.
So can you
thing.
just for the audience explain what that is, and then is it all just bullshit? Because I was reading it and I was like, this sounds so fucking stupid. And the main issue I had here is like the first step of making I keep forgetting the words, a modern portfolio theory is to find your risk-free asset.
Yeah.
And so sentence one, I'm like, well, this is fucking stupid. There's no such thing. Therefore, this theory is retarded. So
it's not a bad starting point. I mean, look, I didn't think it was bullshit when I was learning it. So
yeah, of course not.
to be fair. And when it was developed and winning like Nobel Prizes, there, you know, in the 50s, the US bond was, I would say, a much more serious, like a more, you could say with a straight face, you could look at it more as a risk-free asset than you can obviously now. Right? It's not as absurd to think about it like that back then when it was being developed, right? That's the one way if I had to defend it, right? Is that like prior to 1971, it wasn't. It was certainly at least a little bit more defendable.
Ooh, that's an interesting point, right? Because if you're investing in a U.S. bond pre-71, you're really investing in gold, which is hard money. Therefore, you could say it's risk-free.
Well, you're at least you're investing in a company in a country that is honest about its liabilities and about honoring their liabilities. I would say that at least, right?
Okay. So do we now live in a world where a risk-free asset, is there
There's
any
no
such thing?
Yes, there's no
And
such
so,
thing.
okay, so my question for you is, do you personally feel Bitcoin is more leaning risk-free than any other given thing you can buy? Like, what do you personally think?
I think I would say it's the closest thing to a safe haven. And it's the closest thing to like what I would call a risk minimized asset that anyone will find anywhere, anywhere. And so this is definitely like my big message to companies. Like you need to look at Bitcoin as a risk minimized quote. You can put risk free in quotes because that's how like you'll view the world, right? The reason I wrote about modern portfolio theory was to explain really what BlackRock is doing with Bitcoin, which is, you know, in a very simplified way, I believe, just kicking out. They're looking for a way to kick out bonds and replace them with Bitcoin. You know, I really would encourage people to read the chapter. But BlackRock got into a lot of trouble trying to manage a bunch of companies who borrowed on their bond gains, and there was no way to liquidity manage. There was just no way to liquidity manage them dealing with a 5% rate spike, or even overnight. It was like a 3-day spike in the British gilt by like 100 basis points. There was just no way for them to manage that. I think BlackRock goes back in time and says, if I was always in Bitcoin and I always had the ETF, if these clients were always in Bitcoin instead of bonds, that whole situation with the British pension crisis, that the bailout of 22, that never happens. It's not like I'm selling Bitcoin. I'm not selling British bonds. So no government's calling me up and telling me to stop, right? No government is like saying, "Oh my God, you're causing a crisis because your clients are getting liquidated with my government money," right? BlackRock, I think, sees Bitcoin as governmentless and a very, very golden opportunity to be in a governmentless, for their clients to be in a governmentless money asset, that is. Um, it's also just, if you look at bonds, if you look at Bitcoin next to bonds, it's actually it's just stupid no brainer to say the risk of Bitcoin is like microscopic next to bonds, especially long bonds. You get rid of all the counterparty risk, you get rid of the monetary policy risk, you're open 24/7, 365. All you have is a drawdown risk, which we found out in 2022. Guess what? Bonds have a pretty good drawdown risk now too, right? If there's really a crisis, an inflation crisis, and the United States decides we have to spike our rates, or actually, I mean, really, what happened in the UK was pretty bad too. But I mean, the U.S. bond market had quite a drawdown, and the long bonds had 30% drawdown. So like the idea of a risk-free asset right then and there should have been just out the window.
Okay.
Not to mention just all of the other risk that you take on with bonds, say corporate credit risk, or whatever it is whoever the issuer is. Bitcoin has none of it, and that's why, like I said, and that relates to the previous question with the ETF. Is that if you really want a risk minimized asset, you have to hold the Bitcoin. You can't, you're definitely losing some of that fidelity. You're losing a good amount of that fidelity. You're giving a lot of that risk back by using the ETF. You're taking on counterparty risk. You're taking on custodial risk of somebody else that you don't have eyes on. It's no panacea there.
Okay, that's fair. I want to talk more about BlackRock. Let me I just want to get a one-word answer from you so that we can move on with context. I just want context of where you stand here.
Good.
Are you a fan or not of Larry Fink?
No.
Okay. So you're not a fan of him, but no. Okay, sure. So my question is, why did Larry, Mr. Fink, need to create this ETF? Is what BlackRock does is just like, I don't understand what they do. I don't know what the business model is. I don't know what BlackRock is. All I know is that they own a bunch of shit. So did Larry just basically say, Bitcoin good, but I can't control it. So the best way to control it is to make my own ETF because I can't buy one. And then if he can be in control of the ETF, he suddenly has control over Bitcoin, sort of. Like, I'm trying to understand what his incentive for making the ETF was, rather than just being like, if he came to all these conclusions that the gilts and the bond market is fucked and all this shit, why didn't he just buy Bitcoin like the rest of us do? Why did he need to make this ETF?
Let's pretend. Can we pretend for let's pretend for the next 5 minutes that he's a normal executive and not a lizard person.
Okay.
His clients are all invested in bonds, equities too, but also bonds. And
sorry, just one question. So his business is asset management. Is that what BlackRock does?
BlackRock is an asset management company, and so basically their clients, they advise their clients' investment strategies.
Is this similar to what Burry was doing in 06, 07? Michael Burry, same thing, just on a much larger scale.
I don't know if I really understand what Burry was doing. I mean, I think he was a guy with he was like a doctor with an investment newsletter that he was recommending.
But he had some fund that he managed other people's money.
Yeah. So BlackRock, yes, BlackRock does that on just call it a billion X scale.
Okay, sure. Yeah. I've watched that movie many times. I'm like, is this all that Larry's doing?
But
Okay.
but his clients are in the most traditional assets there are, which is, stocks and bonds. Typical 60-40 portfolios. In some countries, they're, with their pensions, that are long duration, they're using long duration bonds. So when your clients are invested in bonds and they borrow on their gains, it's really hard to manage. I mean, if rates never go up, it's very easy to manage. But if you're ever worried about, it's just like if your clients are in Bitcoin and Bitcoin never goes down, it's very easy to manage, right? Um, so like imagine you are an investment manager and your clients are all in Bitcoin and they start borrowing off their gains, right? You would want some way to, if the price comes down, right? If things turn, you probably would want some way to stop the loss so that they can do this practice responsibly, right? Where you say, well, okay, we're going to expose you to like 30% loss and that's it. Okay. I'm not going to expose you to 80% loss. I'm not going to let you just get totally liquidated, right? And with bonds, it's like impossible. There's no mechanism to track the price of a bond. You can track maybe the interest rate risk. You can track, there's certain things, there's certain components of the risk you can track. But in Bitcoin, there is a way to track the price of Bitcoin, which is called the ETF. That is the answer. That is my long-winded now answer to why the ETF was needed, or that's why BlackRock felt it needed to have an ETF.
Wait, why do you need the ETF to track the price? Why can't you just check the price of Bitcoin?
I don't think BlackRock feels like they are going to actually own enough Bitcoin to be able to do that for their clients. I think Fidelity is. Fidelity does. See, you got to look at BlackRock next to Fidelity. Fidelity's been doing it for 6-7 years. They own they own their own Bitcoin. Fidelity didn't knock the SEC's doors down to have an ETF, right? So like that's like Fidelity is your answer to like, what if what if there was like an actor that I thought was decent, how would they do it, right? They would not tell anybody really. They would just do it, right? They would stack Bitcoin, build that competence for many, many, many years. The problem is that you show up, you have this revelation. BlackRock just like showed up with this revelation that Bitcoin had to solve their problem. That's clear, right? That's clear. You don't like go from saying Bitcoin's only for criminals to be like, hey, guess what? I'm all in Bitcoin now. You don't just do that shift without it being like a massive existential solution, right? You don't do that just for like, I feel I'm in the mood to control Bitcoin or something like that, or I want returns. Like BlackRock is in it for more than that, right? This is like existential for them. And I posit, okay? I argue that this is existential for them.
So you're saying that the non-government, the fact that Bitcoin is not government controlled is why you think BlackRock appreciates Bitcoin, not just that the NGU.
Yes, because in a big drawdown where their clients have to sell en masse, right, to avoid liquidation, they're not going to get a call from a government the way they did 3 years ago, right? The way
sorry, explain this. So the gilt spiked. They put the interest rates up. Somebody called Larry and said, you got to stop this.
The Bank of England.
The Bank of England called BlackRock.
Yes.
And BlackRock was on the hook to figure out how to diminish the losses.
Basically what they said was, please stop selling. Please stop selling. We got this now. They basically did their version of the BTFP, right? Which is what the U.S. ended up putting in when we raised rates, which is that.
Okay.
So they basically just came in with a bailout and said, please stop selling. You're just going to kill our market if you continue selling. We've got you. You're bailed out. Not that they're bailed out, they're clients. And it wasn't just BlackRock. There were other investment managers that were involved. But
So that's where I don't understand, why is that bad for BlackRock then? If the government can say, hey, everything's going to shit, but don't worry, we got you. Why is Larry incentivized to buy Bitcoin? Why doesn't he just keep playing the fiat game if he's going to get bailed out?
Because Larry doesn't like being bailed out. Larry likes being on the government side, determining who gets bailed out. So Larry getting bailed out is a big problem.
Why? Sorry, I don't understand that.
It's a big problem for BlackRock because it means BlackRock is no longer, essentially it means BlackRock is no longer the big powerful company that essentially determines the direction of who gets bailed out in the world, which is like, if you go back to 2008, BlackRock was very influential in deciding who got bailed out back then. I read a lot of it researching for the book. I almost couldn't believe it, like that, how involved BlackRock was in allowing Lehman to go, Bear Stearns, not Bear Stearns, but allowing Lehman to go and deciding essentially who got rescued in 2008. BlackRock was advising the government on this stuff. That's the side they want to be on. They don't want to be on the side of getting bailed out. Okay. You understand?
So you're saying he prefers the power?
Yes, that's what it's all about.
Okay, so then how does owning a Bitcoin ETF give him this power?
Well, so the ETF is just a means to an end.
Okay.
But what the end is having their clients not invested in their local government bonds per se, but invested in a government neutral money, right? A government neutral investment, such that if they ended up really selling en masse, no government would care.
Oh, okay. So yeah, they can buy and sell however much they want. They can do what they want. If they want to tank the price, they can tank the price. If they want to pump the price, they can pump the price.
Nobody's calling BlackRock to say, please stop selling Bitcoin. No one's calling anyone to tell them that, right?
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. That was my next thing, is like, as Bitcoiners, we all bullshit like we know what the price is going to do. Everybody's like, nobody knows what the price is going to do, but everybody also thinks that they know what the price is going to do, which is cyclical, stupid bullshit. So like, we could see, I don't know, I think I've been kind of black-pilled lately, and I'm trying to work through this of trying to figure out.
Couch.
No, dude, like, everybody thinks Bitcoin's going to go up forever because of all the great things that Bitcoin stands for, right? But if Bitcoin is owned more and more by institutions, people that have control of lots and lots and lots of money, then I think the cycle thing continues. I don't think we see Weimar anytime soon. This is like new theories that I have.
Right? I don't know if that's a black pill thing, but I do agree that, I think if we were dreaming of the acceleration thing, just because something's a good thing or a bad thing doesn't influence whether or not I think it's going to happen or not. But I'll just say that that's not, like, Weimar is not something I'm ever rooting for.
No, me neither. Me neither. It's just that I think
the ETF makes Bitcoin a much more free market. I do think, and I think that is just, for me, regardless of my career or any of my experience, making Bitcoin a more free market just makes sense. And even if, it's like, maybe that's undesirable. Maybe that extends the fiat problem longer, but I don't think it does. I just look at it as it makes Bitcoin much freer. People can short it and long it freely. It's not, I don't know. I think a market without a spot ETF is like, you're not a real asset unless you can, you're really not, right? You're not,
okay.
You're not really on the world scale, and people can, it's, and I don't know. I think a lot of the stuff, it just really doesn't affect Bitcoiners that much, unless we're like, if you're living and dying by the price every day, you're probably not um, you probably have a high time preference
Sure.
that you and that's not a moral failing. That's just the way a lot of people are in the
Mhm.
world that we live in today, right? Like this thing, look, the thing with Bitcoin is it's slow, dude. It's like a slow fucking burn, and it's not good. We were talking about core knots because of that was your last episode, and I told myself I wasn't going to talk about it because I wanted to come here and talk about my book. However, I do think that a lot of people, when they have this realization that maybe it's going to take a lot longer than they thought for Bitcoin to do its thing in the world. And some, like a lot of these OGs, I call them OGs, and a lot of these Knots guys are OGs, they've been around for, we'll call it the better part of 10 years, right? Maybe just getting sick of waiting for, like, they're just tired of waiting for Bitcoin to work. And they don't, I don't know, like it's very slow. This could take much longer than our lifetimes. Like, we may not live long enough. Well, maybe you're younger than I am. I may not live long enough to see a dent, like a big dent made in fiat. I hope I'm wrong about that. I just don't know that I just don't know that I will. I think these guys are really good at kicking the can.
Yeah, dude,
You
that
know,
that's that was my big wake up. Is like you get into Bitcoin, you start learning about money, you're like, oh shit, they can't kick this can much longer. It's like, oh bro, the street goes on for fucking miles, dude. Like they're gonna and I think so you're saying Bitcoin/Bitcoin ETFs will even elongate that road further.
I don't know. I don't know. I know a lot of people believe that the ETF unfortunately elongates the fiat complex, stablecoin bill, whatever that horse shit is, elongates. Look, I think, we talked about, you mentioned Eric Kason because I think he was on your show, right? I love his quote that, like, there's nothing more powerful than an idea whose time has come. And I think once the world, you know, just comes to terms with that the time has come, it's not going to matter whether there's an ETF or not. It's not going to matter. Like, all those things aren't going to matter, and that's like the moment I guess we're really waiting for. I don't know if I'll live long enough to see that moment, but I know that day is coming. Maybe it's for my kids and my grandkids. Maybe I see it. I don't know. But I do know that day is coming. That's the day I live for.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah, I know. We'll just I don't know. Bitcoin carries on. It's a crazy road that us Bitcoiners are on. Nobody knows what's going to happen next. I agree with that fully. I just think, yeah, I don't know. The accelerationists were big for a while. I don't think we're doing that. I think it's going to be long and drawn out, and maybe that's okay. It's fine. Life goes on.
My
Okay, I want.
partner, my partner, business cab is an Excel. He believes in it. He believes we'll see it. I mean, I know a lot of people who just, you know, maybe we will.
Maybe.
I feel like, dude, in 2023, I really thought we were going to see some shit go down. I mean, dude, once rates went up 5% and we saw just the devaluations of the bond program, and I was, dare I say, like, that's when I saw how good they were at kicking the can. When they came up with the BTFP, that's I forgot what it stands for, the Bank Term Funding Plan,
Program.
whatever.
Yeah.
Like,
Buy the fucking paper is what Larry Lepard called it.
dude, I was like, these motherfuckers always have trick up their sleeve. Like, they always have a fucking trick. Okay. And so it's just going to take a lot of reps, and it's going to take it's going to take just the propagation of hard money and the deterioration of easy money. I don't know. I just don't know how long it takes, right, before they start printing worthless paper. I think as long as we can still buy Bitcoin with it, we're not even close. Like, we're not even close.
Yeah, that's my other thing, right? Let's you probably have a good opinion on this is the interest rates where they're set at right now. Trump
Mm.
and his trying to crash them is bring the rates down. I think Powell, like I'm starting to become a fan of Powell. Like, bro, if this guy can keep the rates up as long as possible, I'm for it because it's for as long as they stay up, the average man is not getting fucked. Like, as soon as the rates fall, inflation comes back, Bitcoiners get rich as fuck again, and everybody else gets really poor. And
Yeah,
I'm
I'm
not
not
for
rooting
that
for
anymore.
I'm not rooting for rates to go down, even
Yeah.
though I know that's going to make everybody wealthy. I have a very strong view about where we are right now, which is
Okay.
that okay, look, you got to go back to 2022. What precipitated the last crash was rates going up, right? It was just a giant liquidity suck. That was like the spark, right? And then once the prices came down, all this leverage got destroyed, and then just got worse. You know, the contagion effect, and 3 hours capital. You had a contagion effect of all that, all the way down to FTX. Okay, right. So like the whole crash down was precipitated by this liquidity crushing event called rates going up very fast, right? We Bitcoin has climbed back to not only its all-time high, but nearly 2x the all-time high in this most difficult monetary environment. Okay, we may not be living in a time of hard money, but it certainly ain't easy at 5+%, right? Money got money got a lot harder in the last 3 years, right? It got a lot more difficult. Certainly difficult to obtain, and that's I think a lot of reason we don't see a lot of stupidity. Like people wonder, like what happened to all the shit coins, all the stupid projects, and even the fucking ordinals and all that stuff. It's a different ball game in with 5% rates when you just can't get a bag for nothing. Okay, it's nice. I mean, I would say it's actually a little bit nice. Now there's a big part of me that now feels the pain. I just bought a new truck, and that's not new. It's 10 years old. But like I was telling the story on my other podcast about, you know, being told that typical rates people are getting are like in the 10s, 11s, 12s, 13%, right? That's very painful for people. Um, so I sympathize with that. However, the world ain't here to make life easy for everybody, and when it comes to the money, it's just, I think we all would agree that a hard money environment, a more difficult monetary environment is probably a better one for the world. We see less malinvestment right now, and people are crushed. This is like the true austerity right now. It's like the forced austerity. It just sucks that it's being decided. It has to be decided by like a person. Like that's just really the worst fucking like aspect of it. I'm not. I can never say I'm a fan of Jerome Powell, although I'm not a hater of how he's conducted himself in the last 3 years.
Yeah, I guess that's what I would say. I think a lot of people thought he would bend the knee, and I think he's trying his best to hold on. I'm not a fan of him either. I shouldn't say it like that, but I'm just like, keep those rates up, Jerome. Maybe just and that's kicking the can down the road more too. Like the longer the rates stay up, the longer the road gets again, the more the can gets kicked. Right? It's as soon as the rates drop, if they do that in September.
And they will.
You think they will? Yeah, I
Yes, I
know.
do.
Kind of.
I do.
I know. It's
In
conflicting,
fairness,
right? It's so conflicting as a Bitcoiner because you're like, yay, rates go down, assets go up, but at the same time, it's like, yay, rates go down, free money for everyone, prices go up on everything. Dude, I had a friend. I had a friend I was talking to that bought. Just a quick side note, she bought a house in 2020. I don't know, whenever the rates were at like the lowest of the low, where you're just like, oh, this is insane. And
yeah.
then she took a what's the one, the flexible instead of fixed. So I was like, are you what? Why would you
Variable.
do
She
that?
took the variable rate.
The variable,
Oh
that's
my
the one. I
god,
was like, are you
it's
what? And
heartbreaking.
so now she's getting wrecked. Obviously, she's like, oh yeah, my mortgage payment went up by whatever. I'm like, yeah. She's like, well, over the long term, apparently a flexible is better. I'm like, the rates were at fucking zero. Yeah. Anyway, sorry, that was a side note, but yeah, I don't know what brought me to that. Just rates,
These are just
sad.
like look. I hate. I don't like moral judgments, and I don't like the conflation of like time preference to morality. It's just that if you don't have any savings, it's very hard to have anything other than a super high time preference. And a variable rate mortgage is just another high time preference act. That's all, and that's all it is. And it's just unfortunate that that's what people choose. It's I would say almost like these are little moments of weakness of people that have sort of weak frames, don't maybe fully understand um, the risks of what they're doing. It's dude. You get people who've never thought about this in their life, and they put a pen in front of them, and they put a pen in front of you, and you have to like make a massive decision like that. And we're just allowing, we really just allow anybody to do that. And yet we think that we need to, yet we think like Vanguard needs to protect its investors from Bitcoin.
Yeah, it's a silly world, I know. And that's the thing too. These people that are signing mortgages have no fucking clue what they're doing. That's what I realized. It's like
they just want their house.
Yeah.
They just want their place to live.
Like you and Business Guy were talking about. They just want their payment. I don't care how much I'm
Yeah.
paying in interest. Just tell me what I'm going to pay a month, and I'm going to carry on with my life. It's a sad world to live in, especially being a Bitcoiner when we spend all this time learning about how the monetary system works. It's like, why don't you just listen to fucking 40 hours a week and you'll be fine? But anyways,
I do think, look, I mean, just as a friend, right? I consider us friends, and I feel your pain. Like I really do feel like I feel the pain. You're like a lot of young guys I know, right? That just want this world to happen for fuck's sake, right? Like to get sane. You want the world to be sane in the worst way. And I so get it. And it's like all like when I imagine you reading my book, all I could say is like I'm sorry that I'm so conditioned to have accepted this insane world. Like that's the most I can empathize, because unfortunately I'm a lot older and I have had to accept how fucking ridiculous it is. And I guess part of me just understands that it's going to be like this for a while. I would love nothing more than for this world to get sane now, right? It's heartbreaking to have to live like it's just like it's heartbreaking to have to know it's like this. I get it, man.
I in my notes when I was reading lots of the sections, I was just like, is everything in the financial world just fucking retarded? Like when you talk
Yes.
about the different like with the modern portfolio theory, reading through that, I'm like, people make careers out of this shit. Like it's
Oh, yeah.
all bullshit. There's so much bullshit in the fiat world that's been propagated because of, I don't know, fiat money.
The
And then
idea
I'm
of a
reading through
risk-free
this.
asset and the idea of that risk-free asset being a U.S. bond. I mean, this is like psychotic.
It's all, and people. This is people's careers. That's what drives me the most nuts.
That's
It's like
right.
this all goes away when Bitcoin wins. Like all these people that have. Yeah, I don't.
It all goes away
track
long before Bitcoin wins. To be honest, that's the thing.
Well, that's my other question, man. Okay, where did, I have so many questions.
See,
so.
BlackRock is already. See, here's the thing. I'm not a fan of Larry Fink, but I'm telling you that BlackRock is fucking Trojan horsing this thing in here. Like it's. I don't want to say it's okay that they're going to help us, but they are going to help us. Before, like they have work, they have a mission, and that mission, while they're on that mission, they're going to help us. And the second they accomplish that mission, they are going to become the fucking lizards they are. But right now, they are. It's like this is why. So I wrote this second section about Saylor and Fink, to especially Michael Saylor, because when Michael Saylor had his mission, he was one of us. And when that mission was accomplished, he's sort of like he's onto something else.
So
right?
that was another question that I had for you. Just like quickly, it's like it was very interesting to see that shift in Saylor. Right, he went from I care about Bitcoin, I care about the mission, I care about this. Now all of a sudden, 2025 Saylor is I like Bitcoin, buy my STRF or STRK or all this bullshit. And like I don't understand how any Bitcoiner is falling for that. It's completely fucking mind numbing to me. Like why would you listen to this dude? It's like he had this
podcast insisting that nominal returns were the only way to measure returns and not Bitcoin adjusted. I mean, he was really let us know where he was at. And this is now like, look, like what I want to really get across is that people come into Bitcoin with a personal problem to solve. And they they're not a monolith. In other words, maybe a good way to say this is people are not fungible over time. Okay. Because as long as they're here with us in the present, solving a problem, we're all kind of in it we're all kind of doing the same thing. Once that problem gets solved, it really then depends on who you were you're going to it depends on who you were before you got here. Right. I think Saylor is probably a more human being than Larry Fink. So his reversion to whatever he's going to be is going to be a little bit more of a human being than what Larry Fink's going to revert to.
Mm-hmm.
But while they're here, they are going to be like pretty decent actors, in my opinion.
Sure. I just think Saylor's problem was he had the fucking $500 million melting ice cube. He turned that into Bitcoin. He didn't have that problem anymore. Now his problem was, I don't have any money to buy Bitcoin. What can I do? And now he's created all these financial fucking wizardry bullshit to generate more money. And good for him for and whatever. Like if you want to give your money to Saylor, have
Bitcoin is for individuals, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I always say, don't look at the man, look at the problem they're solving.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like my best advice for Bitcoiners. If you want to understand these people, like, are they friend or foe? Look at the problem they're solving. Mm-hmm. Are they solving a problem that resonates, that relates to an individual? Well, Michael Saylor was solving a problem called like my savings are at risk, my life savings. I sacrificed a lot to have these savings. I could have had 1 billion more yachts or blah, 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 right? But I didn't. I had the savings and it's now at risk, right? Everyone can relate to that. His problem that he's solving today is not as relatable.
Yeah, his problem is I need $40 billion to buy Bitcoin. I can relate to that problem.
I'm not judging him, to be honest, right? I think if he's like, whatever, he wants to speculatively attack the dollar, if that's the thing. I mean, look, whatever it is. I'm not really here to judge it. I'm just saying, the real point is that, like, even like Larry Fink can be a human being and have a fucking existential problem to solve with Bitcoin. And, he's going to do it. He's not going to let Coinbase get in his fucking way. He's not going to let any of these shitheads, honestly, put BlackRock at risk. He's going to accomplish this mission.
That's fair. They have problems. They're going to solve them in ways, I don't know. I wouldn't trust anyone. This is why I like Bitcoin. You can just disregard all this bullshit.
Because it's like you look at people's incentives. Are you looking to cut this?
No, I have a question that relates to what we're talking about that I just want to touch on because it's another thing that I disagree with. Cool. So just on page 165, you kind of summarize everything that you think institutions should do. It's literally
so that's like the opus, like the last thing.
The last thing.
So there's yeah.
So I don't have. I should have wrote down the actual page where you discuss this. But
I know exactly what you're gonna. I know exactly. It's when I said embrace what BlackRock's gonna do. Is that the thing?
Well, it's utilize structured credit arbitrage that involves Bitcoin as collateral.
Got it.
So that's my one thing too that I don't understand why people are doing this. So just sell me on this idea because I don't using Bitcoin as a loan. I don't understand it.
Yeah. So this is another thing. Like the ETF, I wouldn't do it. I don't own the ETF. I never will. I can't imagine a scenario where I'm even in a conversation about it, right? I'm not into borrowing either. Okay, right? I think you should earn your money, save your money, save it in save it in Bitcoin because that's how you protect your money. Okay. Now, but I'm not here to judge what people do, right? So people do borrow money. People do take on unsecured debt. I don't think they should. I don't think that's a person. It's just not my values. My values is you can have secured debt, right? But I wouldn't take on unsecured debt. Okay. Now, having said that, my big revelation with regards to structured credit and Bitcoin collateral, it's not so much why an individual would do it. We kind of know why an individual would do it. Individuals are degens, a lot of them, right? They want to borrow, and that's fine. That's not my values, but that's what people want to do. They want to borrow, and it works out for some people, right? If you look at somebody who borrows and puts their car up as collateral, or puts their house up as collateral, or maybe just puts a stock, like a stock portfolio up as collateral. That's a better example, right? You can clearly see that these three people are going to behave differently, right? with regard to that loan. And the lenders know this. Lenders know this. So lenders would require less of a house, a little bit more of a car, and a lot more of like a stock, right? Because they know that people will walk away from their stocks. And they actually know people will walk away from their homes too, but it's very easy to walk away from, you know, a bunch of paper assets versus like people need their car and they really need their house, right? What they don't account for is how people will behave if their Bitcoin is at risk. And what I believe will be these arbitrages is that you'll be able to, by putting Bitcoin up as collateral, a lender is going to know that you are going to do whatever the fuck you can to pay that loan back, even though a traditional lender won't see you that way. A traditional lender will actually not see a degenerate putting Bitcoin up as good credit. But the Bitcoin lender will understand this. That is the arbitrage, because if you just create a portfolio of people who do this, which is going to take a long time to even have, it's going to take a long time for this market to even exist. As far as I know, it doesn't. There's like nothing right now, right? But this company, Battery Finance, if they're successful, right, and there's a lot of people doing this, then if you're a CIO and you're putting, you're running your own fund, right? You should, you could take advantage of knowing what the rest of the market doesn't, which is that these are going to be very good risks. This credit portfolio is, it's going to have better retention. It's going to have lower default than like a high yield junk that the rest of the market will look at it like, right? That's really where that's at. That was what I wanted to write about.
So wouldn't it just be better to be the lender rather than the lendee, if that's a word?
Well, that's who this is geared towards.
Okay, so you're saying companies should set up situations where they can loan money out to individuals. That's what Battery does.
Yeah.
The same thing with Ledn. Are you familiar with Ledn?
Yeah. What Battery does is has a 4-year lock where they won't. In other words, the Bitcoin collateral won't be looked at for purposes of like keeping the loan to value ratio at a certain level, which means you can go a full cycle, right, with a full drawdown before you're even looked at as having to liquidate, right? So you get 4 years, and then you also get a share. Somehow you get a share of the, share of the gains. It's clever and it could work. Honestly, I'm not looking at it from the lender or the lendee's perspective. I'm looking at the entire credit market and saying there's a certain subordination structure right now that's based on AAA, AA. That's sort of based on the issuer. That's not based on it's based on collateral, but does not understand how hard somebody who put their Bitcoin up is going to defend that loan.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah. I can see that now. Okay, yeah, I guess, I don't know. We'll see more of those products come up, and then we'll see how people react to them, and if they're able to. That'll be an interesting thing to witness as well. Okay, a few more questions.
Sure.
Question number 1, not number 1, whatever question it is. But if you were... So ultimately, I think this book is not about orange pilling institutions. It's about orange pilling individuals that work for institutions. So my question is, if you were an individual that knew nothing about Bitcoin, would this book have orange pilled you? And then that said, is there anything that you missed out, or you'd like to add, or
I don't consider myself in the business of orange pilling anybody. So let me just preface by that, right? It's more about like, I don't think it's okay to be ignorant. I don't think you can be a viable executive and be ignorant to Bitcoin. I think those days are over. And I was at a back to school event yesterday just as an example, and a couple of friends, they're all like, "Oh, well, how's not working treating you?" And I'm like, "Well, I wrote a book." And they're like, "Really? What was the book about?" And I was like, "It's about Bitcoin." They're like, "Oh, but I understand it." And so, like, okay, I have a friend who's like a realtor, and I said, "You know what? The first part of my book, like, I would want to know that if I was a realtor, I would want to know why Bitcoin matters." My another person was a math teacher at the school, and the same. By the way, the school accepts Bitcoin. That's something that I did 2 years ago, and I would want to know why it matters. Like, why does Bitcoin matter? And so, yes, like the first section of the book, especially. Obviously, the chapter on Michael Saylor isn't going to be of very much interest to a realtor who doesn't know about Bitcoin. However, this first section about Bitcoin being for individuals, I think, is it's like a great little pamphlet for ordinary people to get caught up on why Bitcoin matters. It wasn't meant for that, because I think there's other books that do it very well, and I wasn't trying to be the why Bitcoin guy. It's more like it's really why Bitcoin for normie executives who just still don't get it, right? Because it's like I'm not giving you the answer unless I give you the real talk about why it matters first. Like, that was really where I was coming from. Like, I could have just written the last section and said, "Here, do all these things. Come, let's get to work." But I was unwilling to do that. I'm unwilling to give you the answer without you getting an earful from me about what, here's what you need to know if you're even going to dip your toe in this water. So, but I think that what you need to know, like what the executive needs to know, I think is very useful information to normies who, I don't think there's a person on earth who isn't grappling with, should I care about Bitcoin? I don't think there's a person on earth who isn't at least like wondering that, right?
Yeah, that's fair. I think you nailed it with the time to be ignorant about Bitcoin is over. Like in 2020 when I
Professionally,
talked,
for damn sure.
yeah, yeah, like you can't ignore this thing anymore. It's fucking stupid if you do, and more people are gonna wake up to that, I think. And yeah, we're definitely seeing that shift. So I think in that sense your book makes a lot of sense. It's like people that are just saying, okay, maybe a lot of people are gonna say, maybe I was wrong about Bitcoin. Let me learn a little bit. And I think you do. Yeah, so you say you're not orange pilling, but I do want to give you a little bit of kudos for uh, section 10.2, good news, Bitcoin always wins. And you do a great just pinpoint accuracy of the important aspects of Bitcoin there. Every Bitcoin book needs it. So yeah, as much as this book is for institutional CEOs and whatever, I think anybody could pick it up and read it and at least learn something. Like if a stupid construction worker can read it and figure out some shit, I think it'll be useful for a lot of people. I definitely recommend it. I need to just give you, I'm very proud. There's nothing I love more than a good Bitcoin analogy, and you got a fucking awesome one that I hadn't seen before. So I just want to flip to page.
Can't wait to hear
And
this.
well, I was like,
You've
so
never said anything this nice to me, by the way. So, like,
no,
this is
dude,
great.
there's
I
nothing
love
I
you,
love.
man. I love you.
There's nothing I love more than a Bitcoin analogy. When I read this one, I was like, "Oh, dude, that's so fucking good."
All
So,
right, what
like
do we
when
got?
I had Scott on, he compared Bitcoin to water, but in a way that was very very esoteric. It was fucking cool.
Scott was a big inspiration to me to write the book, by the way.
He's a top tier dude. Definitely
Yeah.
definitely recommend. Have you read his book?
It's on my shelf. It
Okay,
needs
fair enough.
yes.
Fair enough. Sorry, I was ill prepared. I usually try and find the page, but I'm just gonna scroll through my notes here, find out where this was. Tell people about your podcast and why they should listen to it.
Well, I have 4 podcasts, but I'd say the flagship
That's right.
of Rock Paper Bitcoin is definitely, if you just want to hear really 2 guys talk about Bitcoin in terms of like the impact it has on their life every couple of weeks. That's what our podcast is. It's just what we deal with in our life. It's not macro. It's not anything other than just what we deal with in our life. And people seem to really like it.
It's it's a very easy listening, just two dudes talking about their life. That's why I like it. I listen to every episode. Definitely recommend if you're a
Appreciate that.
Bitcoiner, you should listen to Rock Paper Bitcoin. I've only listened to bits and pieces of your dude. I'll talk about this off air.
It's okay.
Well,
you just really put the brakes on.
Sorry.
That's
Just
cool
like,
to watch.
that's fine. Okay, dude. This.
Yeah.
You discuss about a man deciding the importance of learning how to learn about Bitcoin, and then you compare it to somebody learning guitar. And your analogy is this. Turns out that understanding Bitcoin is like learning to play multiple instruments at the same time. Guitar, piano, drums, horns, and you got to know how they all come together. You also need to learn music theory, how to conduct an orchestra, and understand why music exists in the first place. I was like, that's perfect. Because it's such a silly thing to say, but it's so well analogous to Bitcoin in that, like, nobody understands what money is. And so this idea of like, what money? I don't know. We just use it to buy shit. You literally have to stop and understand why music exists. It's like, I love that. So well done.
Thank you. You know what, man? I know now that I hear you say that, like you of all people, I feel like would appreciate that mostly because I know how you came down the rabbit hole. That's like for most people, they read that and they're like, that just sounds insane. But that is how it was for you.
Yeah,
So I appreciate you. I appreciate you giving me that feedback.
yeah, dude, that was a badass analogy, dude. I'm a psycho for sure. I'm all in on Bitcoin. That's why it's hard for me to talk about Bitcoin because it's hard to not go too aggressively about it. Anyways, topics for another podcast for sure. You told people about your podcast. Tell people where to buy the book. I know that you also have it online for Sats and a digital copy. So tell people all of that stuff and where they can find it.
Anyone can get the digital copy for 2,100 Sats, and I think that'll be the price for a while. I feel like maybe it'll drop in half at some point in the next halving, But like for now, 2,100 Sats on. It's called Zeus Pay. It's called ZeusPay.com/BTC for institutions. I'm sure this will be the link in the show notes. But I wanted it to be, inexpensive enough that you could basically go on Nostr and say good morning for a month and be able to buy the book. Just by contrast, you can go to Amazon and buy hard copies, and the Kindle version I priced at $10 I gave it a substantial fiat surcharge. So like if you're willing to pay in Bitcoin, you pay a lot less. If you see me in person, you can pay in Sats. I think I was selling the soft copy for 10,000 Sats and the hard copy for like 15,000 Sats. So if you see me in person, I'll sign for you and all that. Otherwise, yeah, go online. Go to that Zeus Pay 2,100 Sats. It's like pretty trivial. Do whatever you want with it when you get the copy. I like to tell people is, get the copy and think about giving it to your boss.
That's a good suggestion. I think, I'll just mirror that and say, if you're a Bitcoiner that likes Bitcoin stuff, then you should just read like this was my big thing, man. I listen to a lot of podcasts. I'm reading Bitcoin books. I got them on my shelf here. It's a lot more enjoyable, and you get a lot more insight into what an individual thinks. Like, me and you have talked for a couple years now. We consider each other friends, but reading your book, I really got an idea of who you are and how you think, right? And how that differs a lot from how I think. But that's important if you want to understand people and understand why they care about Bitcoin and all that stuff. So definitely go check out the book, buy it, support Bitcoin for institutions. It's excellent. I would recommend. I appreciate you, Brian. I appreciate your time. Appreciate the listeners. All that
appreciate
stuff.
Coming on always, dude.
Oh yeah. We won't give it another 2 years until we talk again. Let's fucking crazy, man. Anyways, it'll be a lot soon. Did you say where people can find you on Twitter? You should probably do that.
Fundamentals 21M on Twitter, and then I can read at my Nostr MPub, but Fundamentals on Nostr.
Right on. Cool, man. All right, with that, thanks for listening, guys. Thanks for checking it out. We'll see you again soon. Alright, so what did you think of Brian? Are you intrigued to check out his book? Did his perspectives sway you one way or the other? He's an intelligent man, that's for sure. Can't deny that. If you want to check out the book, I got the links posted where you can find it on Amazon. He's got it posted somewhere to buy it for sats for only like 2,100 sats, which is nothing. Like that's, what, $2 right now, roughly. Check out his shows. They're all over the place. Follow him. All the links will be provided somewhere. You can find them. And if you want to support this show, I appreciate you. Best way to do that is just share it. Sharing helps. Subscribing, liking, retweeting, reposting on Noster if you do that. And if you want to help financially, I posted my Lightning address down below. That'd be cool. All right. See you on the next episode.